Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Holly Pasquale, and it's my pleasure to say a few words about Kevin. First, let me tell you a little bit about me so you know why I'm standing up here. Some of you know me, some of you probably don't. My husband, Bert, and I came to Bethany in the spring of 1994 to the Bethany Community Church building on Route 1. I was fresh out of grad school, a brand new teacher, and Bert and I were newly married. Babies. We actually had pretty much decided on another church, but visited Bethany and never left. At that point, we had been looking for a church for about 8 months, and we were looking for a safe place where we weren't the anomaly attracting the hostility to our newly minted interracial marriage. We got stared at in both black and white churches, a lot. Our first Sunday at Bethany, we arrived and immediately drew attention to ourselves, since we were the only ones clapping. That still happens. Bethany was welcoming, and we could just get to work. So I grew up as a Christian Scientist, and I came to faith through the campus ministry of InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. This is significant because I wasn't raised in a church with a pastor. And during my college years, I was a transient member of a couple of different churches, as college students tend to be. However, I was pretty familiar with the imperfections of pastors, since my mom was happy to share some of her poor experiences. So I have served here at Bethany on the worship team as a volunteer, then as paid staff, and now I'm a volunteer on the worship team again. So all this is to say, I've been here a while and in various roles and have seen some things. So, Kevin, Pastor Kevin, Reverend McGee, is not Bethany Community Church. Though this church is a reflection of his personality and teaching style, he has not been alone in the journey. So I want to thank all the folks that came from Bethany Long Beach to plant this church. That includes Rick and Laura, and Gary and Vicky, and Bob and Val. Kevin is a vessel that God chose to use to lead us to this point in the journey. So as I speak, know that I absolutely acknowledge that any good that Kevin has done here is by the providence of our mighty and merciful God. So as I began to write this talk, I realized that Kevin has been my pastor for nearly half my life. I don't easily trust many people, so this is significant. It was significant for me as I realized this. I could probably tell you most of his sermon stories. Chainsaw, check. Navy story, check. Catching football after sitting the bench in high school, check. Navy, football, Navy. Life verse, 2 Timothy 2:2, check. He's the real deal, y'all. The kind of pastor that is not going to make headlines because he's doing right. One who has been a good friend to many people, been faithful to his wife, who has loved his daughters openly and softly, who has struggled with the difficult and the real in front of us. No, he's not perfect. He's made mistakes, like tossing my son into the ceiling light. He needed stitches, y'all. And the doctor that put him in there, Dr. Pastor. We have not always agreed. Some of you may think that pastors are supposed to be super Christians. Don't believe the hype. Like Pastor Randall has recently reminded us, he's a sinner who's talking to a bunch of sinners about not sinning. So thank you, Kevin, for being real and not talking down to us. So thank you, Kevin, for carefully handling the Word of God and speaking for God in our lives. Thank you for encouraging us to ask questions, discuss, and wrestle with our faith, since Jesus came to take away our sin, not our minds. My mom, who's still a Christian Scientist, by the way, always comes to Bethany when she's in town. She's told me on more than one occasion how she respects Kevin's study, knowledge, and teaching of the Bible. Bethany, and specifically Kevin's teaching, has been a refuge for many of us. I realize it's actually been a privilege to place myself under the authority of this church, with Kevin as our lead pastor. So, the word pastor means shepherd, literally to feed and care for sheep. It seems weird that sheep would honor or thank the shepherd, but we are not ordinary sheep, and we are not easy sheep. We have sheep chilling out in the pasture, some sheep hanging out on the perimeter, sheep fighting with other sheep. I lost my place. Sheep refusing to grow wool. Sheep that think they're dogs. You get my point. Kevin's task all along has been to shepherd us and to lead us, sometimes to places we didn't want to go. His task was to point us toward God so God could melt our hearts of stone. And he has led by example. Bert specifically remembers one of the reasons that we stayed at Bethany was Kevin's heart for reaching the lost world. I've watched as he's allowed God to move and expand his vision and his heart toward deaf people. We've watched much change as God has expanded our pastor's heart and led us to even more cultural sensitivity and all the challenges that come with all the cultures that are represented here. Racially, internationally, deaf and hearing, men and women, recovered and recovering, all of us struggling in sin, but seeing God's victory in the midst of the struggle. I have observed how he stood for justice in many arenas. I have watched how his ministry and leading has turned our church in the direction of the poor and the prisoner. So thank you, Kevin, for growing in front of us and hanging in there with us. When we step back, we know you have protected us more than most of us know. You have defended us more than most of us know, sometimes at great personal cost. You've taken arrows and insults and endured more than most of us know. You have done so by the providence of a merciful and mighty God. So we found Bethany a safe place to authentically worship God over 25 years ago, and we have seen some things. As a church, we have experienced incredibly tragic things and wonderful, amazing blessings. We have watched friendships fall apart and marriages die and people leave in anger. We've also seen God's miracle of physical healing, financial provision when we didn't know where the money was going to come from. We have seen addictions healed and friendships and marriages restored. God provided when we didn't know how it was going to happen. Grace upon grace. You feel it more keenly when you've stayed through it all. Some of you know what I'm talking about, especially at an imperfect church. An imperfect church that loves imperfectly. But when I step back, I realize as difficult as it has been to walk through our personal tragedies, Kevin and a few others have walked through everybody's. The simple and the unimaginable for hundreds of us. Illness, loss, too many explicative funerals. Most unexpected. Our marriage has sat in the 2 chairs in Kevin's office. Some of you know what I'm talking about. He's seen many of us at our best moments, but many more of us at our worst moments. He's shown up either way when it's been hard. And he didn't bear those sacrifices without cost to Anne and his daughters. So thank you all for your sacrifices. Thank you for holding in confidence the weight of so many personal struggles and heartbreak. We know it's true, but we don't think about it. When people leave the church, it hurts. When people give in to their failings, when people you know you've invested huge amounts of time and energy and money and heart, it hurts. When people gossip and complain or downright betray you. When your personal life is personal and profoundly difficult, but you still need to show up for other people's problems. When folks just act dumb. And you still have to behave because you're the pastor. Thank you just doesn't seem to cover it. But please hear the deep gratitude of the people of Bethany past and present. Before I close, let me say to my Bethany, I told Kevin he would always be my pastor. While that's true, it doesn't mean that I will be running to him instead of our new pastor when I'm struggling. I will embrace the change of command that God is sending. I will not keep looking backwards and compare, but expect the challenges, even adversity, that comes with change, because God is refining us and bringing us new joy. Fresh water from old wells, if you will. So now's not the time to be sheep on the edge of the pasture. I'm going to kind of mix my metaphors here. All hands on deck. Change is difficult, so let's close rank and open our hearts. Love each other more. Welcome new people and love them in. I'm praying for a gospel movement among every least reached people group in our generation. Kevin, you will always be my pastor. since you have been that nearly half my life. Not that I'm not excited and ready to love and serve the new pastor that God will send, but by way of saying the footsteps you have left in my life have led me toward the Lord. And God chose you for the task. And so for that, I'm deeply grateful. So let me finish with this prayer that is also the last verse of the Navy hymn. O Trinity of love and power, our brethren's shield in danger's hour, from rock and tempest, fire and foe, protect them wheresoever they go. Thus evermore shall rise to thee glad praise from air and land and sea. So Kevin and Aaron, fair winds and following seas for the journey ahead. We love you.